right? And so the three things that I end up telling clients that they hate to hear the most are first, and we've talked about this before, that you need to do 90% of the thinking and the work when you're trying to communicate to an audience. It's not 50-50. They don't owe you their attention, or they don't owe you any amount of work on their side to
Or
figure out
anything at
what it is
all.
you're trying to communicate, right? And then the second one is that, and this seems harsh, it's not meant to be, it's just, once you know something, you can work around it and optimize for it, is nobody cares about your message, right? They already have rich and full and distracted lives. You have to snuggle into something that they already care about. This is from a couple of previous videos, including the Stephen Covey example that we showed. And then the third one, and mostly because people confuse it with humor, and I'm not talking about humor, but that your media communication, so your webinars, your videos, your blog, whatever, they are a form of workday entertainment. And if you don't approach it that way, if you approach it as, how do I figure out what I want to say and then the best way to say it, if that's your approach, then you're not going to get nearly as much audience and nearly as much audience engagement as you want. You really do have to think about what will they pay attention to and remember, and then fit your stuff onto that car instead of trying to get them to jump onto your car. Workday entertainment. We're all in the entertainment business. And doesn't mean you have to be funny. I mean, I'm not funny. And I work pretty much exclusively B2B. So really, there's not much place for humor. Humor is very difficult to do properly. And you never get everyone in the audience to enjoy any kind of humor. It's too varied. But you absolutely have to approach all of your marketing type comms from an entertainment standpoint, right? If they're not enjoying, if they're not intrigued, if they're not satisfied or happy that they've stumbled onto this or that you've pushed it into their life, then they're going to drop it and move on right away, because going back to the last point, they already have full and fully distracted lives. So it's you're really in the entertainment business, even though most of us would never think of ourselves as entertainers. Do you think of yourself as an entertainer?
Me? I think it kind of depends. In webinars, no. I don't think of myself as an entertainer in webinars at all. But
No.
if I'm doing, well, I don't know. I mean, I guess so. I feel like I'm trying to get a message across, and I may be entertaining in the process, and maybe not so much. And I do think you kind of have to be a little careful with coming up with funny quips or going off script,
Yeah.
because that can be dangerous. I think Biden just found that out the other day.
Yeah. There's kind of nothing more painful for a business audience than
Yeah,
having someone try to make a humorous comment and then sort of chuckle to themselves in front of the audience. And then you have those awkward few seconds of silence and then they move on. It's like, don't do that. Don't try to be funny.
no, no,
If
don't
you're
try to be funny.
naturally funny, not many people are, but if you're naturally funny in a business context and you're sure that the humor can't offend anyone, sure, I guess, go for
I
it.
guess.
But you're in the entertainment business. You're not in the comedy business, but you're in the entertainment business. And if we think that people are signing up and then watching only because we're such, we're so brilliant and our content is like so technical and so accurate and so like what they need to know, then you're veering very close to a sort of preachiness that nobody likes to be preached at, especially in a workday business kind of context. That's not a thing.
Right. I'm just
Right.
looking at one of the comments off to the right. It's from my friend Meryl Clark. And Meryl said that's the biggest issue is people are very distracted on webinars. Example, emails. That's why I keep the hook for the end of the call. And also, we always have sales speak on our call because then their peers will listen. What do you think about that?
What is sales speak on a call?
I, th- I think just,
You mean like salesy kind of language?
a
And
salesy kind of language,
yeah,
maybe jargon that's, I don't know, Meryl, if you're still listening, maybe kind of
yeah. I can
add in on that.
confirm
But
for Merrill that he's absolutely right in that,
yeah,
and I tell every client, people don't watch webinars, they listen to webinars. For the
yes.
most part, you're background radio to something else that they're already working on.
Yeah, at
And
least
so we
B2B.
write for listeners, we don't write for viewers. And also because
Yeah.
let's face it, the number of slides that you would have to have in a deck so that something's happening on screen every few seconds, which is what you would need to keep people's visual entertainment. You're not doing that. I don't have a single client that does that. The amount of work it takes to have hundreds, or in a 30-minute webinar, you would need 700-800 slides,
Hmm.
right? Most of them would be identical to the one prior to it. So it's like bullets are coming on. I do not recommend animation in any way unless you're using Apple Keynote instead of Microsoft PowerPoint. Definitely don't do animation in PowerPoint. It's way too hard and too buggy. But normally, how I have them build slides is if you've got 4 bullets you want to put on a slide, then we have one bullet with just the one slide. The next one has the 2 bullets. The next one has the 3. And all they have to do is advance. It's bulletproof. You can't screw it up in a
Right.
live event.
Right.
And there's none of this like having to click backwards a bunch of times because you click too far ahead. And then it has to figure out how to undo the animation. It's just a mess. But we write for listeners, which means that in my work, I'm writing at a 4th grade English level.
Yeah.
4th grade reading level. Almost everything written has to be at around a 4th, sometimes a 5th grade level. Even though I work primarily with tech, complex manufacturing, pharma. I mean, these are not simple topics. In fact, the whole point of
Right.
the organization like eventsignup.net, right? It's all about complex being delivered into a complicated marketplace. And so it's usually senior technical people who are creating the content, and then it's my job, the base level content, and that's my job to go in and turn it into something
And
that's
simplify it.
understandable to someone half interested as they.
So Merrill said amen, but he was talking basically about sales execs. So I think you're talking, Merrill, about the internal webinars within the company, not so much webinars to
Yeah,
outside
but
um, potential
everybody
clients.
attends webinars distracted. Like, and
Yeah.
the other thing is we get caught up in ourselves, right? We think that when we're giving the presentation in a live webinar, everyone is like looking at the screen and just drinking in and soaking in every word. But
Mhm.
whenever we're in the audience for a webinar, we're checking our mail, we're checking Facebook, we're getting our real work done, because businessy kind of thing, webinars like this are really workday entertainment. And so we think that our audience doesn't behave the same way we behave when we're in the audience. And that clearly is illogical. Just like everyone thinks that they have a great sense of humor and everyone thinks they're an above average driver. And like the math will just prove that's not possible. We can't all be above average, right? And so, yeah, you're right for listeners, and you assume that most of them are not looking at the screen most of the time. This is why I tell my clients, like, don't worry. Every other preparation you've ever done for a webinar, you spent 99% of your prep time tweaking slides. I say you're putting all of your effort into the least important part of a webinar. A slide is only there to deliver information that someone's going to read, and it's going to compete with your voiceover. So sometimes that's necessary, but understand that that's going to happen and work around that and optimize for it. People listen to webinars. People even listen mostly to YouTube. They listen to videos.
Right. And I was gonna say on the technical side, that's why it's really important to optimize for the voice quality, because a lot of people don't do that. They just think, oh, well, I've got slides, and they don't
Right.
optimize for the voice presentation quality for that,
Yeah,
and
that's an
everything.
excellent point, by the way. That's worth pointing out.
Yeah.
I did this course once years and years and years ago, and the chapter of the course was called The Three Most Important Things in Video. And they were in order: audio quality, and audio quality. Because people will watch a webinar if the visuals are crap, but the audio is good. But if the visuals are beautiful, but the audio is grating or, distressful to listen to, people will not watch. They'll stop.
Hmm.
So there's no more important part of video than audio.
Okay. So Meryl said no the 4th grade level. Does that mean that
I don't know what
you
he means
think
by
that
that.
you think the content is too technical for a 4th grade level? And then the slides a backdrop for the detail. The strategic intent is for the presenter to talk about it.
All right, so let's go over those both.
Yeah.
Virtually every complex technical topic can be expressed in 4th grade English.
I
4th
think
grade
so.
English can communicate
Yes.
a lot. And secondly, yeah, the slide supports the speaker, and in my case, the script, because I write what they say word for word. The slide supports the script. There's even parts of the slide where it refers to the script, the script where it refers to the slide, and then comes back to it. But yeah, if you do it the other way, the traditional way, the slide is the show, the main character, the slideshow, and you as a speaker are the supporting character. That's terrible. And also, if you don't have a script, what happens is the slide comes up, your mind has that little pause, and the audience has to wait while your brain comes up, sort of improvs what you're going to say this time, because you never say exactly the same thing, no matter how many times you rehearse, if you don't have a script. So if you just put up a slide, then you're doing this sort of instant improv. And over time, slide after slide after slide of instant improv, the audience gets a bit bored and distracted.
Okay, so Meryl says, you're spot on with the 4th grade level. Love it. I always say keep it at a 6th grade level. Yeah, I mean, you're not far off. I think it's important to kind of simplify it as much as you can. But I mean, there are always a few, I find, coming from that technical background, I always find there's a couple things. It might be a slightly higher level, 6th grade, I could see.
Yeah, in my structure, which is
cases,
sort of like a 10-piece structure, that
yeah.
Usually I just give I'll give the client a 10-question. It's like what the audience is thinking, or what the audience's objections or fears might be as they listen to a pitch. And then I'll give them, and I'll say, you just give me the bullet points for your answer for each of these. And then I go back in the document and I turn it into prose. And then I give it back to them, and they'll add in a little more, and so on. And then at the end of it, you strip out all the questions, and there's your script, and it's in their voice. But there's one specific section of that whole thing, which goes into, basically it asks, like, how does this work? And that's the one section where you can go beyond 4th grade English, right? Because your job there, you're sort of conveying multiple things at once when you're talking about how it works. Now, granted, without a structure, for most technical kind of webinars like I do, before I come along, 95% of the webinar is how does it work?
Yeah.
And that's not addressing nearly any of the questions or fears that the audience has before they're willing to let your company move closer to
And
them.
probably much more technical.
Yeah, it's way too much, and they're just filling time.
Back.
So, but I have a section there. I give them up to about 40% of the entire presentation can be the how does it work, but really not much more than that. And you're doing a couple things. You're conveying to the audience, or to the to your prospects, right? A, we're totally transparent about this. Like, here's all the details. Theoretically, you could make this yourself. And then B, you're also saying, also covertly, you're never actually stating this, is that this is complicated and we've done all the thinking and all the work on it. You should just give us money and jump straight to the results. Jump straight to the
why not? Yeah, of course.
But the underlying, the third part of that, which is not even a question, it's just an intent, is you want to slightly overwhelm the audience with detail. So if you've got a slide where it's like a very complicated diagram or flow chart, or workflow or whatever, that's where it goes. In section 8, which is how does this work? Because you want to convey, sure, theoretically, you could build this. We're transparent, we're open because we're so confident in it. And at the same time, this is complicated. We've done all the work. We've done all the thinking on this. Why not just give us money and we'll give you the solution? And then you want to slightly overwhelm the audience by putting in, that's where your complicated stuff goes. If you're going to go beyond 4th or 5th grade English, that's where it goes. And it's and because it's intentional, right? It's there for a reason. You're going beyond simplified language for a reason. You want them to understand, that looks like so much effort. Let's just give these guys a PO.
Yeah, let's just let them do it.
Jump straight to the future we want to live in, right?
I don't want to mess with this. Yeah, no, I understand.
So there's a place for, complicated stuff, but you don't put it all over the place, and it can't be everything. It belongs in one section, and you're doing it with intention.
Now,
instead of defaulting into it and then boring the audience with slide after slide with 500 words on each slide and diagrams they can't even read. And if they miss, even if their mind drifts for even a minute, they're basically lost for the whole thing. Not acceptable.
Yes. I remember those days.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, because Meryl got me thinking about something. You must do both types of webinars, internal and external.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Do you notice, so like if you, because I would think internal webinars, you're going to be able to use a little more jargon because the audience is familiar with it. You're all from the same business, same company. Do you find, though, that you're still using the same placement? Is that webinar a little bit different, maybe written in a little higher grade
So
level? Are you
when
using more of
I'm
the jargon?
hired to write an internal webinar, it's usually not an educational, unless sales enablement is a different, it's its own field, right? Where we
Yeah,
have
yeah, it's its
stuff,
own thing.
and like product or product marketing wants to create, like, another piece of basically training kind of content that
Yep.
we can then present to salespeople, right?
Yes.
But generally, I'm hired for management teams who have to present to a management team higher than them, who might not actually know all the jargon that they're going to use,
Yes.
right? But
Right.
for the most part, you still try to stay away from jargon, and not because you only use jargon. It only has two purposes. It's a shortcut among people who understand all the concepts, so we don't have to say the whole thing. We can just say the word, right? And secondly, it's a way to try to impress an audience that you know lots of stuff that they don't know. Generally, that doesn't work so great on internal or external
Hmm.
presentations. So
Yeah.
instead, what we find is the closer we can get to explaining everything in the fewest possible words in the simplest possible language, the estimation in the audience, whether it's upper management or sales or whatever, that we know what we're talking about
Yep.
goes up. Like if they, wow, that guy explained it like so clearly that I understood all of it, he must really know his crap.
Yeah.
Where it comes from. When I write for CTOs, it tends out it's that comes up almost every time. The
Yeah. I would think
simpler
so.
it is, the more they think you want, the better they think you understand it.
Yeah, because you're bringing it down to the level. So Meryl said, from my perspective, internally is far simpler than external. Totally is far simpler than external, and that's just because the people internally are familiar with what you're talking about, where you're trying to persuade on the external side.
Yeah, on the internal side, unfortunately, it often leads to an attitude that we don't have to put in the effort to be entertaining. We don't have like we don't
Right.
doesn't matter. These people are like obligated to attend.
Yeah. Another person said, keep it simple.
Yeah.
Um, that's always the key. Simpler the better. Simpler the better.
It's
More
a
more
lot of
easy to
work
understand.
to make something simple. Like if you take anything you've written, a blog post, anything that's more than say a couple hundred words, and you go paste it in an app like HemingwayApp.com with one
Yes.
M for Hemingway app, and look at the reading level and the use of passive voice and the rambling sentences you have, and then it's probably going to come in anywhere from reading level 11 up, right? Even to postgraduate, depending on what you write. And then you try to get that number down and keep trying to get the number down and down and down into a 5 or a 4 or a 3. It gets progressively harder. It's very easy to start with something at reading level grade 13 and get it
Mhm.
down to 11. It's harder to get something from 11 to 9. It's much harder to go from 9 to 8 or 7 and go. It's almost like a reverse Richter scale for earthquakes, right? Where an earthquake 8.0 is 10 times as bad. Uh, an 8.0 is 10 times as bad as a 7.0, and a 7.0 is 10 times as bad as a 6.0. It's like that, but in reverse. It's much,
Right.
much harder to get to the lower number. Like it's if you ever want to like frustrate yourself for half an hour, take something that you wrote that comes in at level 13 or postgraduate and get it down to level 3. Like you will really understand the fundamentals. And the better you understand it, the more simply you can write it. But you'll really understand it if you can get it down to level 3.
Oh, totally. Every level makes a difference.
Yeah. So it's much harder to go from say a 5 to a 3 than it is to go from a 9 to a 6. Well, I think that's about it. We so just to reiterate the point, right? You're you're a special kind of entertainment when you're doing any kind of live event or presentation or video or whatever or blog. You're any sort of business communication that's not strictly internal, and it wouldn't hurt to get into the habit to do it internally as well.
Mm.
Is you're a kind of distraction, you're a kind of entertainment, you're a kind of a break that could still be considered work-ish, but you're a kind of a break from the regular workday. You should approach it from the point of it needs to be entertaining and interesting. It's just not about presenting facts. And it's worth the effort to think about what people will want to pay attention to and remember, and then figure out how to align your content to that instead of just saying, all right, What do I want to say? And what's the best way for me to wordsmith that? I hate that word, by the way, wordsmithing. Really hate that word. It's a terrible term.
Mm.
But it's your entertainment. You might as well just accept it. It doesn't mean that you're not, your content is less valuable. It's actually more valuable if it's business entertainment than
Yeah.
otherwise.
So this is an interesting question that I think I've got a pretty good answer for. How do you keep ranking for SEO with such simple copywriting? And I think the way to do that is just keep it as simple as you can and bring in the SEO terms that you need
Yeah.
along the way. One thing I can say, I've learned along the way is a lot of times our SEO tools lie to us. And so you really want to be cautious of what your customers and clients and internal, folks are giving you for keyword terminology to see if they're better
Yeah.
buying keywords than what you're saying and try to work those in with whatever you're doing.
Right.
So, there's a
And
couple
that
approaches
falls back
around.
into us very similar. I talked about how, as a presenter, we think everyone's hanging on every word, but when we're in the audience, we're distracted and checking our mail and stuff like that.
Mhm.
You go and you search for something on Google, you are very rarely in the top 10 results, very rarely clicking through into an academic paper, which you'd think about it would have every term and exactly as complicated language as it needs. It doesn't happen. You're almost always in the top 10, which is the first page. Click anything in there, you're almost always going to come into a simplified, more entertaining, easier to comprehend version of whatever topic you're thinking about.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
clearly, that approach for SEO must work because Google is bubbling all of those things up to the top.
yeah, it tends to like simple
It
terms.
likes it when people have put in the 90% of the work to
Yeah,
figure out the right way to do the communication. It
yeah,
rewards that. Right? And that's just, we don't need anything complicated to understand that. That's our own experience every single day.
yeah. Rewards that
Type
and
in a
consistency.
disease. You don't end up with like medical journal articles. If you type in a disease, you end up with, God, I mean, probably like stuff you shouldn't be reading, but you end up with all kinds of stuff that's way more comprehensible than that. Is that a
Yeah,
word? Comprehensible? I'm not even sure
comprehensible.
comprehensible is a word.
I think
Easy
so.
to understand
Yeah, it's
than
easy to understand. Duh,
so
it's
just
no
our own
commitment.
experience on any term you put into a search engine shows you that if you're
Mhm.
doing the 90% of the thinking and the communication work on behalf of the reader, then that's what gets rewarded for SEO.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. I think that's about it for me. We went a tiny bit longer than I thought we would, but there you
That's right.
go.
We had lots of questions, and we're happy to
Yeah.
answer.
Happy
So,
to answer questions.
yeah, and feel free. If something comes up after this and you think of it, feel free to post it in the comments, and we'll make sure we get back to answer it. But thanks for participating, huh, everybody.
Thanks, folks.